Good afternoon. For this historical discussion and historical research on the Picts, I chose three different articles that kind of circle around one, the area of where the Picts were, and two, the argument between the patrilineal versus matrilineal society. The first article I chose was Royal Succession and Kingship Among the Picts. This was from Project Muse. And one of the issues that we run into and what the article talks about is deciding whether the fragments of evidence that we have from Pictish society are actually representative of the Pictish society, or is this just representative of survival, right? This issue also comes into the relevance of royal succession, the debate over which those Picts practiced that matrilineal system with the son of the previous king's sister becoming the next king, right? Or whether it was patrilineal with the kingship passing from the male line from father to son. Until the 1980s, article states that the matrilineal thesis was virtually unquestioned and accepted by scholars. A basis for this view were the accounts of the Pictish settlement in Norman Britain in Bede's ecclesiastical history of the English people, which this pops up in my research very frequently, but mainly survives in versions from the 12th century or later of medieval history. They claimed that the Picts went into Ireland before arriving in Britain, and they entamed wives from the Irish, with some versions stating that this was done on the condition that succession went through the female line. So this is where that first pops up. But now looking at the successions themselves, it's possible that this was not always the case. The second article I picked was the Picts Facts and Fantasy. This was from the Oxford database. The explanation, this goes into the naming of the Picts, and it talks about the explanation of the name as Roman army slang for painted savages, and that's probably false. That's probably not where the name comes from, because it's unlikely that an entire group of people or civilization would take on a derogatory name. Not impossible, but it's unlikely. It was more probably a term, as they state, misunderstood by the Roman military. They heard it, they misunderstood it, but it was for non-Romanized North Britons and not an ethnic term until much later in history. Scotland had faced incursions from the Anglians, the Gaelish Scots, and Vikings, and few categories of archaeological monument are typical in this eastern region, though some standing stones with symbols and letter cross slabs are concentrated here, so we can see some recordings of the Picts and what their daily life may have looked like and kind of what they called themselves. The language of the Picts was Celtic, and a notion of a distinctive tradition of matrilineal descent now has widely been discredited. So in this article, it talks about that matrilineal descent as well, which links into my other article. The last one I chose was Hadrian's Wall Alive. Hadrian's Wall is a massive monument, now monument, but before it was the edge of Roman civilization as it bumped into Pictish society and the Northern Britons, who were not part of Roman, the Roman Empire. So knowing more about Hadrian's Wall, knowing one that it was built in 120, actually to keep the Picts out from the Roman areas, and to keep them up in the north. It's very well preserved. The Picts, it is said, did push the Romans out. Roman accounts obviously color that a little bit differently. But this book itself gets in depth into Hadrian's Wall and its importance over that time period, and talks about the Picts as well.